Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
All right, good evening. Welcome to our Tuesday, July 9, Sioux Falls City Council meeting. Thanks for being here. We're having a few AC issues, so bear with us. It might get a little warm in here tonight. That's all right. Clerk, we'll go ahead and get started by reading our roll, please.
Council members Erickson. Here. Kiley.
Here.
Neitzer. Selberg.
Here.
Sale.
Here.
Starr. Here. Staley. Here. Brecky. Here.
All right, tonight to lead us in our invocation is Reverend Dr. Martel Spagnolo. It sounds delicious. And it is. And he is with First Congregational Church here downtown. So he'll lead us in our invocation. If you will rise for that and then stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please pray with me. Gracious God, you have put lawmakers before us throughout the years. And some are good, like Moses and like Jesus. We ask you that we may be just like them. And when we come in contact with those who are most in need, like lepers, we put them first and expect nothing in return. When we put those who differ from us in ideas and thoughts, that we are open and treat them with dignity and respect. May we be like Jesus, who loves. Let us remember the words of Paul in Corinthians. You may have faith to move mountains, but you do not have love, you have nothing. So let us be led, not just by our faith, but by how we live that faith in love, the selfless denial for the benefit of others. May we always keep that first and foremost in our heart and our mind, the heart and mind that God knows and probes. Keep us humble. Let us not be puffed up. And let us love for the benefit of all. And we ask this in the name of Jesus, God made man, one with God, Father and Spirit forever. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we will move on to item 4 on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. Look for any changes or motions on that item.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, motion to approve by Kiley, seconded by Councilor Staley on that. Any discussion on that, Council? Okay, we'll take a vote, please.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Move on to item 13 then, which is our regular agenda. Look for a motion on this.
Move approval. Second, Sale.
All right, motion to approve this item by Selberg, seconded by Sale. Any discussion on that, Council? All right, we'll take a vote on that, please.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0 as well. We're at the general public input portion of our agenda this evening. As a reminder, our input during this portion will last no more than 3 minutes per person, and in total last no more than 30 minutes. During general public input, the public is welcome to speak on any topic that does not appear later on in the agenda. For regular agenda items following general public input, comments are limited to 3 minutes unless the item is being presented for final adoption, in which case public input is limited to 5 minutes. For all regular agenda items, comments are limited to the agenda item under consideration only. At this time, I'd like to invite anyone forward for public input. Clerk, Please note our time is 7:05. Good evening.
Sierra Broussard, Sioux Falls. Okay, so we have a massage parlor that got busted again on Monday. I want y'all to be aware, and I'm going to educate council and bring flyers on human trafficking. There is a lot of red flags being thrown at a Jim Dunham's property here. There's red flags being thrown in another county of Lincoln County on massaging with Asians. As of right now, Mr. Ken Keller's property, he's not going to be collecting his $1,900 a month on these victims. Now we have to worry about somebody else doing it on 41st Street. This is a licensed massage therapist, so she's going to get her license pulled. It is a difficult time for the police department. They was in a tough spot because of the politics and the higher power of Mr. Ken Cutler. I know for a fact because I worked with them nonstop for 3 years on this case. Mr. Ken Cutler will never be charged, but now this is his 11th tenant that's going to be charged, coming here shortly. When we see human trafficking, when we see provocative signs, when we see big bulletins and neon lights going on, it's all signs of human trafficking, prostitution, and pimping. Here, I don't think that council is aware of all of this, and if they are, then this stuff that's in their district, they need to start reporting that to law enforcement. Here, and I'm going to say I'm not finished with Mr. Ken Cutler. Here, politics played a big role in it. There's higher people involved in this. They transport them out of California, then they have to get someone to house them here. And then they put them in a commercial front. And then they collect the rent money, and we need a landlord for that. Then we need a landlord to interpret for them when they get busted. So we need to hire an interpreter. And not only for that, but then the police department, when they bust them, has to get an interpreter, and that costs us a lot of money. And as of right now, we're almost $15,000 on Ken Cutler's property that the taxpayers have paid just on the arrest and getting a interpreter to go and interpret it, because when those doors have been busted down, they don't stand a lick of English no more. After that, they shut down. I will continue to fight for this illegal massaging, and I want to tell you that the police department does a terrific job. I'm not going to tell you how they do it, but I'm going to tell you this. They go you can't even tell that they're undercover cops when they go in. They look like a regular customer. They played the role very well. And I'm very happy to say that we got a good street crimes unit that can play the role and is not stuck out like a sore thumb on this issue. Thank you, Mayor, for your time.
Thank you, Sierra. Anyone else this evening for any public input? All right, clerk, next item, please. Oh, come forward, ma'am. Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening, council members and members of the public. My name is Melanie Bliss. I live at 2021 South First Avenue. This is a summary of a very long testimony condensed into 3 minutes. Last Wednesday, about 10:55 a.m., I saw men laying on Sioux Falls sidewalks perpendicular to the street, even one lying horizontally on top of another person, 2 laying out on their backs, 2 slumped against a fence, 1 asleep in a boulevard atop his bicycle, 1 sitting in a wheelchair against a telephone or electric pole, and nearby a bigger group of adults in a tree planter, and then a group sitting on a wall. The ones lying down or slumped did not move, causing me to think they were asleep or passed out. This afternoon and evening, I returned to the same sites at 1:15 and 5:20. Again, persons slumped against a fence, or persons lying down on the sidewalk. I'm given to understand that there is nothing that can be done because it's not against the law to lay down on the sidewalk, and that persons lying down are not doing anything illegal according to city ordinance because they are not trespassing on private property. However, my faith compels me to speak truth to power, to walk alongside people, and to care for others. How can we allow this to happen in our town? Have we no resources for persons who are at the end stages of their lives? Who will be responsible when they when they die? Where is the contingency plan to keep people from dying on our city's sidewalks? Last Wednesday morning, I walked into City Hall crying to talk with the mayor. The door to his office is locked, and I had to ring a doorbell to be let in. I identified myself and asked politely to see the mayor, but he was in a meeting, and then when I said I would wait, I was told he was in back-to-back meetings. I asked for him to call me. I left my telephone numbers, and no one has called me. What can we do together to avoid the imminent emergencies of people who cannot care for themselves lying on our sidewalks? This truly shocks the conscience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie. Anyone else this evening? All right, clerk, next item, please.
Item 15, second reading, an ordinance approving the annual rate increase pursuant to the franchise agreement for ground ambulance service for the City of Sioux Falls with Paramedics Logistics South Dakota, LLC.
Good evening.
Jill.
Hello. Jill Franken, Public Health Director with the City of Sioux Falls. Item number 15 is ordinance required in our agreement between the City of Sioux Falls and Patient Care Logistics Services, which stipulates how ambulance rates or fees will be set. And specifically, the annual increase is identified to be greater than 3% or the consumer price index for any given year. And that was 1.9% for this last year, ending May of 2019. As you are aware, the REMSA board has reported that paramedics, patient care logistics services has met their contract requirements, and they support your approval for an ambulance rate increase of 3% for this coming year. Mike Bureau and Mark Postma are here as well tonight for this item.
Thank you, Jill. Anyone from the public here to speak on this topic tonight? Councilors, do you have any questions for Jill on this? Councilor Staley.
And I don't know, maybe Mike can answer this. Well, and Jill, you can be on standby. But this is just, we've talked about this in the past, and I had received a call from a business in town that is dealing with the same things that Melanie Bliss just brought up, where you have people who are on sidewalks, on parking lots, heads maybe bashed open because they're so intoxicated, and then the ambulance has to be called. Can you, this person who was business owner was concerned that this was costing the city money in this ambulance cost. And I said, I don't think that the city has to pick up the tab. You know, if someone doesn't have insurance, and how does that, is the county paying for that, or how does that, because this ambulance service is the one footing the bill?
Can you just clarify, so you're wondering if an ambulance is called to a scene
and there's no probably no insurance involved.
And no insurance involved.
Right.
Sure.
So how does that get, how's that compensation handled?
So if it goes to the primary insurers, and that includes, for example, there is some charity through the county that has to be submitted through our billing. I can't speak to exactly what the full step is at. Otherwise, that goes unpaid, and that's the ambulance business.
And so what percentage of your business, your billing business, would you say falls into that unpaid category?
Let's see. I'm happy to probably get you that number tomorrow morning, if that would be all right. I don't want to come off cuff with a number. I don't have my payer mix at the top of my head right now of what is, you know, passed on to insurance and then billed to patient and then eventually written off to bad debt is generally what happens.
But some part of it is covered by the county as well, you said?
Not in all cases, in a very small select case, and that is, once again, that's for anybody who's under a county charity program. That isn't through us. That's something that already existed in the county.
So if we're dealing with just our homeless population, they probably aren't, and they're probably not affiliated with any relationship with the county. That would fall.
Likely not.
Then that's going to fall into you respond and then you don't get compensated. You just have to take that as a loss.
Correct.
Yeah, so if you could get me that information, I would appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Bureau or Jill? Look for a motion on this item.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, move to approve by Councilor Kiley and seconded by Sale. Any discussion amongst the council on this? Okay, I'll call for a vote on it, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
No.
Staley?
Yes.
All right, that
And Brecky?
Yes.
I'm sorry, that passes 6-1. Sorry, Janet. We'll move on to the next item, item 16.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations for funding improvements to the Sioux Falls State Theater.
Good evening, Sean.
Good evening. Sean Pritchard, Director of Finance of the City of Sioux Falls. And I will not be as brief as Director Franken tonight.
All right.
I apologize for that.
No apologies needed.
Tonight, what we're going to be discussing, or what is in front of you, is the first reading of an ordinance. It is a supplemental appropriation for funding improvements to the Sioux Falls State Theater. It is in the amount of $1.5 million, and the source of the funding is the entertainment tax fund. As part of this process, and we had an informational discussion about this that TJ Nelson presented for you last Tuesday. But just to kind of reinforce that, we have the first reading of the ordinance tonight. The second reading of the appropriations ordinance will be next week. Following that, as part of that, and in conjunction with that, there will be a gifting resolution that will be brought forward to you that would authorize the mayor to execute a gifting agreement between the Sioux Falls State Theater Company and the City of Sioux Falls. That information will be forthcoming. But I want to walk you through that tonight as part of this appropriation so you have a full global understanding of what the request is. Some of this was discussed at the informational meeting, but I do want to walk you through in more detail on what will be incorporated into that gifting agreement so you're aware of that now as we consider the appropriations ordinance, as well as I'm going to talk about the resolution that will be brought forward for next week as well. That information, we have been continuing to meet. We have taken many of the comments. Many of you have reached out to us and brought your comments forward. We have taken the comments from the informational meeting and taken that into account both as part of the gift agreement, as part of our presentation tonight, and as part of the resolution. The executive board for the Sioux Falls State Theater Company has approved the gifting agreement. There were some minor changes that we added yet today, so our hope is to bring that in final form for you to review on Thursday by 1 p.m. So you will have a full 5 days to review that prior to meeting with it on Tuesday. It is not a long agreement. It is about 10 pages. And then there's a gift disbursement component of that agreement, which is about 4 pages. So you could probably read it faster than I'm about to give you your presentation tonight. Many of this was discussed last week. I'm just going to gloss over this very briefly, but again, this is a historic theater located on Phillips Avenue. The State Theater opened in 1926. It was a crown jewel of our downtown. It existed for many years until it closed in 1991, due in large part to urban renewal. But it is a historic theater, and for many of you, those that you have seen that have had an opportunity to see the inside of it, it is a beautiful facility, and there are really some great opportunities to rehab that facility and reopen it for the benefit of the community. After it closed in 2002, the Sioux Falls Film Society acquired the building, put a new roof on it, and essentially saved the facility to the point where we could even have this conversation tonight. The Sioux Falls State Theater Company acquired the property in 2005, and their passion for this facility has kept it alive throughout this time. They were able in 2007 to get a facade easement from the City of Sioux Falls and to restore portions of the facade. Through that program, they also were involved in a chamber-led community appeals process that generated $2.2 million back in 2011. So there was many things that had been accomplished by the Sioux Falls State Theater Company during that time, many of which, when you're dealing with old historic buildings, you don't visually see. And that's hard for sometimes people to imagine, but when you're dealing with a historic theater, you're also having to deal with many of the oldness of that building and the things that people don't see but do have to be dealt with. These include things like having to remove the asbestos, replacing the roof, dealing with the electrical, plumbing, and the HVAC things. Those are all important to the building, but they don't necessarily lead to the operations of the facility or being able to open it or things that visually people see. But what they did see is the restoration of the lobby with great care. What you do see is the implementation of restrooms on the main level where they hadn't been previously, and the restoration of the outside marquee and the addition of the digital board that was added. So much work has been accomplished, but the promise of opening that facility had remained unfulfilled until now. That promise really became an opportunity almost 30 years in the making, and it was due in large part to a gift that had been proposed by T. Denny Sanford. In seeing and wanting to give back to this community and seeing the value that this facility would have for this community, he proposed and met with the Sioux Falls State Theater Company and the City of Sioux Falls about contributing $3.5 million of his personal resources to making sure that this can reopen for the benefit of the community, and asked that the City of Sioux Falls contribute as well for $1.5 million, not just in terms of monetary resources, but also in terms of technical expertise, that we would be of assistance and work in conjunction with the Sioux Falls Theater Board in helping to ensure that the funds were distributed for the construction and that they would be utilized and that we could reopen the facility. Thus saving a historic landmark for our next generation and opening the State Theater. There is some confusion, and I want to eliminate that confusion as there's discussions about an additional $2.5 million that needs to be raised. The $3.5 million gift from T. Denny Sanford and the $1.5 million gift from the City of Sioux Falls is sufficient to reopen the facility. It is not contingent upon the additional $2.5 million for the other functions of the facility. The purpose of this and the hope is that with the excitement and the energy that is generated by this project, by this opportunity, that there would be an opportunity to bring forth additional funds from other people, and I believe that other people have come forward already to help with the other parts of the facility that would be great to have for the facility but are not required to make it operational. Those include restoration of the balcony area, the basement where the fitting rooms and so forth had been, the second and third floor auxiliary space that sits above the lobby area, and the refurbishment of the organ. But the portions that are most important here that we're discussing tonight relate to the gift from T. Denny Sanford and the $1.5 million from the city. They are both distinct portions of this project that work in collaboration and would be done simultaneously. The focus of the funds from T. Denny Sanford would be on the interior, restoring the main floor, the walls, the artwork, the historic nature of the facility, making sure it's operational with the screen and the equipment and the sound systems to make it prepared to show movies of the 21st century as well. And of course, the seating that we've all heard so much about. The focus of the city funds will be external, primarily, on the preservation of the building itself. These include things like tuck pointing, replacement of windows, any improvements that still need to be made to the signage, as well as roofing, to assess the roofing and ensuring that it is, because it has been almost 20 years now since the roof has been replaced, to ensure that we have a proper roof on the facility that will take it long-term through that. That is the focus of the $1.5 million from the City of Sioux Falls. I'm going to talk a lot about the key points that are included in the gift agreement. So all the items in the next several slides are things that are incorporated and part of the gift agreement that you will see. The first part are the portions that I call a public gift for a public space. If you talk to people from the Sioux Falls State Theater Board Company, and you ask them what their vision of this facility is, what they will tell you that it is about every day for everybody, to make this facility a public facility for the benefit of the public. Some of the things that are being captured in the gift agreement as part of our contribution for the public benefit include free field trips for children to understand and appreciate the importance of preserving our historic landmarks and things of significance to this community. It will also include 1,000 free tickets that will be annually given to underprivileged youth to ensure that no matter what your income level in this community, that you might have an opportunity to be a part of and to see a movie at the Sioux Falls State Theater. And it also includes the opportunity for the city to use the facility for 3 to 5 times per year, free of charge, based on availability. So these could be things like the State of the City, or it could be a neighborhood summit that could be held in this grand facility. Other things in the gift agreement that were of importance to us were preserving the integrity of the public funds that were being allocated for this project. Our portion of the project, the $1.5 million, if approved, that would be provided for this project, would follow the public bidding requirements as if they were dispersed directly from the city. So though we would be gifting the funds directly to the State Theater Company, we would ensure that they would be utilized in the same manner in which we would have. These are not contingencies of the funds from T. Denny Sanford. They are the contingency for our funds because they are public funds. Our funds will be deposited, if approved, into a separate segregated account held with First Premier Bank. It would be a construction disbursement account. The funds from T. Denny Sanford would also be deposited into a separate construction account because they will be used for distinctive purposes. For tracking purposes, it's easier that way. There will be an advisory construction committee made up of 3 members. These 3 members will take one of their primary responsibilities will be reviewing the construction disbursements and signing off on all disbursements that occur. 2 of these members are appointed by the city. 1 is appointed by the Sioux Falls State Theater Company. Our 2 members that would be part of this would be our purchasing manager to oversee the public bidding side as well as the construction disbursements, as well as an individual from the engineering department who will be involved in this as well. Other key considerations that were made as part of this was that there will be 3 mayoral board appointees to the Sioux Falls State Theater Board. It is a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization, not unlike the Washington Pavilion Management, Inc. However, the city will have the opportunity to appoint 3 members to that board, as it does for the Washington Pavilion. We are requiring audited financials to be provided by May 31st of each year, as well as requiring quarterly internally prepared financials to be presented to the city as part of our due diligence for this during the life of this gift agreement. As I stated, the funds would be used for the exterior improvements and interior life and safety improvements, an example of which would be sprinkler systems in the main seating area. There is also included in the gift agreement a discretionary right for the city to purchase the facility for $1 should the Sioux Falls State Theater Board or company be in nonconformance with the gift agreement. This lasts the entirety of the life of the agreement, and the term of this gift agreement is for 10 years, with it beginning upon the first disbursement by the city of its funds. The gift agreement also includes a continued commitment from the Sioux Falls State Theater Company. As I said, it is a 10-year agreement with the city in regard to this gift. They must retain 100% ownership of this property during the life of this agreement. They must show films and hold events as part of their commitment during the life of this agreement. The property must remain free and clear of any liens. The Sioux Falls State Theater Company must manage the facility, or if they hire a third-party manager, they must receive approval from the city as part of that process. They must continue to monitor the structural integrity of this historic building and update the city regularly as to any updates on that side of thing. And this is a single one-time investment. City support is not proposed for the ongoing maintenance and operations of the State Theater. As part of one of the conditions of the gift agreement, the State Theater Company was required to provide to us a business plan, and they did, outlining 3 years, a 3-year pro forma. As I stated, this includes the requirement that they must show movies and hold events there for the entire 10-year of the gifting agreement. What I'm showing you here is the first year of that pro forma, which they worked on with a number of individuals and technical experts in the industry, looking at other theaters of similar nature in other communities, so that they could come up with realistic figures of what their income and expenses would be. During their first year pro forma, they had projected approximately $769,000 in total income, $694,000 of expenses, and an approximate income less expenses of about $75,000. The other thing I want to talk about today is about the entertainment tax fund and the resolution that will come before you, based on a lot of the feedback that we had received from you as counselors and discussions around the use of the entertainment tax fund. One of the key things that we think will be important as part of that resolution is to encapsulate in that resolution the reasons why we believe it to be eligible and know it to be eligible as part of the entertainment tax fund. And we wanted to encapsulate that as part of the gifting agreement as a policy decision on behalf of the council. So I'm going to walk through these, and I'll try not to read them verbatim, but I do really want you to see these because they would be incorporated as part of that resolution of the $1.5 million appropriation and the gifting resolution. The first one being an operational historic state theater would serve to promote downtown in the city of Sioux Falls. attracting visitors to the community and facilitating growth and prosperity. Promotion is a key portion of eligibility for the entertainment tax fund. An independent economic impact study that was done by a professor at one of the local universities that was done in April in 2019 supports that an operational state theater leads to greater economic prosperity in downtown. Not in terms of just the sales that will occur at the state theater, but in the supplemental sales that it will occur in the neighboring businesses, whether they're retailers or restaurants or bars in the downtown area. That will be a key benefit of this facility. Economic development is a key portion of the entertainment tax fund, as it has been reviewed by the Attorney General's office in terms of its eligibility. It will have an economic impact for all of those facilities surrounding that and attract people downtown during slower periods in the winter. The State Theater is a historic structure in downtown Sioux Falls, originally opening in 1926 and closing in 1991. And reopening it will develop cultural awareness for residents of our community. Civic and cultural awareness is a key point in terms of eligibility for the entertainment tax fund. The city currently owns and operates a historic Orpheum Theater, which it does fund through the entertainment tax fund for maintenance, operations, and capital improvements. It is not uncommon for municipalities to own historic theaters, but it is presently deemed in our interest as a city for the State Theater to be owned and operated by the independent 501c3 nonprofit entity, the Sioux Falls State Theater Company. The State Theater is an entertainment facility that will collect and remit entertainment taxes for the city of Sioux Falls. I think that's a very important component in terms of its eligibility. Though not required, we feel it's very important as part of what the considerations that are being made. And not only that, but it will benefit in generating additional economic activity for other people that pay into the entertainment tax fund, restaurants and bars in the downtown area. The State Theater has received a pledge of financial support from a third-party donor. This once-in-a-lifetime opportunity provides an opportunity for the city to engage in a public-private partnership to see this promise finally realized. The State Theater has been in rehabilitation for many years, and without support from the city or from this third-party donor, may continue or could deteriorate to the point where it becomes a public safety hazard, in addition to potentially losing a historic and important landmark in the community. The historic nature of this facility is a key component in understanding why it is being proposed from the entertainment tax fund as well. And finally, as I noted earlier, the public gift will generate a public benefit. The State Theater will benefit the public through civic and cultural engagement, field trips, and free tickets given to underprivileged youth in the community. One of the last things I want to show you is an outlook, and this was prompted in part by a question from Councilor Neitzert, who is not here tonight, about kind of where our balance outlook looks like for the entertainment tax fund. And I wanted to show you this because in many ways we are not just looking 1 year out or 2 years out in terms of the projections that we make for the city, but for the entertainment tax fund, I show you 10 years here, but we actually outlook on it 20 years in terms of its viability in timing things out. We have worked with our partners, the Washington Pavilion. We have worked with our partners, SMG, for the Event Center. We have worked with them for the Convention Center in projecting out when key items need to be replaced in those facilities, or when they would project that their useful lives would be exceeded. Because many of the components, even of the T. Denny Sanford Premier Center, though only 5 years old, they will have useful lives less than the full useful life of that building. We know that there are major mechanical systems that will have to be replaced. We know that there are digital displays that will have to be replaced and will have much shorter useful lives because we want to maintain the excellent user experience that we have at that facility. So we have programmed that in. We know that in a few years, in 2021 and 2022, we will have a large project related to the cornice and that is at the Washington Pavilion and will be significant. And we have encapsulated that as part of our trending. And we have encapsulated this $1.5 million and accounted for it as part of the entertainment tax fund as well. This will not jeopardize the integrity of the fund. We have incorporated it into our projections here going forward. I wanted to leave with one final comment in regard to this facility. As I thought about, and as over the last many months as we've been talking about this potential opportunity, and as I prepared for this evening, I thought a lot about the Washington Pavilion. And the reason why I thought a lot about the Washington Pavilion is because I thought a lot about how difficult that decision was for the City Council at the time to invest in that facility. This is a difficult decision in front of you tonight. It will be a difficult decision for you next week. But looking back, And it's easy to look back now. It's hard to imagine this community without the Washington Pavilion. If you looked back at what happened to downtown over the last 20 years, you look at one point that changed the trajectory of downtown, it was the Washington Pavilion. It was a nuclear reaction that we are still benefiting from today. And I think about how difficult that decision was at that time, and I think about the difficulty of this decision as well. It is a significant investment. It is a great opportunity, but it is a significant investment. And as counselors, I'm sure you will take hundreds, if not thousands, of votes during your tenure, and many of them are very important, and they keep us moving along that important path and positive path that we are on. But once in a while, we have an opportunity to really change the trajectory of downtown and our community. I believe this is one of those moments. I think this facility will change our downtown for the better. When we think about the State Theater, we talk about a building, but I've listened to a lot of people in the public since this has been announced. I have talked with many of you, and what I hear are stories about the first time you had been at the facility, when you were there as a kid, maybe your first date that you had your facility, and I think about this more about people than about a specific building. And I think it is no coincidence when I talk to the Sioux Falls State Theater Company board, and they talk about their vision being every day for everybody, that they don't talk about a building, they're talking about the people. They see their vision for what this building can be for this community. This is a gift, and on paper it is a gift for the State Theater Company, but I really see this as a gift to our community. I think that this is our opportunity to return the crown jewel to our downtown, and I think it preserves our legacy for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item tonight? Come on forward. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. I'm Allison Weil. I'm the executive director of the State Theater, and I'd like to share with you a little bit of the history that you may not know of the state. Like the time a group of ushers huddled around a radio in 1963 and had to decide when they were going to stop the film and get on stage and announce to the audience that their president had been shot. Or the time the State Theater manager left during intermission to go buy tissues after the end of West Side Story so he could hand them out to bawling patrons as they were exiting the theater. Or the time a grandmother busted her 2 grandchildren out of school so they could attend the matinee of The Sound of Music together. Or ask any member of the Lincoln or Washington class of '68 about their times at the State Theater, specifically the snake dance. What I'm trying to get at is this is not just another building. This is not a theater. This is us. This is our history, our memories, our legacy. And it is truly remarkable that the State Theater remains intact and has this opportunity to recreate those same experiences. However, the road to get where we are today has not been easy. There has been obstacles and opposition standing every part of the way. From pipes freezing to there being an opportunity to demolish the interior of the building, but it's been saved. The roof was put on by a generous community member, and a group of historic preservationists and visionaries seized the opportunity to save the State Theater, create a nonprofit with a mission to preserve the crown jewel. And this just skims the surface on the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into the theater. All the hard work, dedication, and commitment is the reason why I believe Mr. Sanford has decided his first investment into the world of arts would be the State Theater. He understands how much love there is for the state. Even the biggest skeptics admit to loving and supporting the theater because they know that the State Theater is the only remaining artifact of our city's golden age of nightlife and entertainment. Now is the time for the State Theater. With the support from the Mayor's Office, Washington Pavilion, Downtown Sioux Falls, Forward Sioux Falls, the Chamber of Commerce, and I can't forget to mention the largest philanthropist in the state of South Dakota investing in the project. Now is the time for the State Theater. She's been waiting for her second act for far too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Anyone else to speak on this item tonight? All right. Joe, come on forward. Good evening.
Good evening. Joe Batchelor with Downtown Sioux Falls. I'm I want to speak on behalf of all the small business owners that couldn't be here tonight. I've been pounding the pavement for the last week on this, and I can't tell you how excited business owners are to see the State Theater open again. I can't tell you what this would mean to them. I want to rewind the clock a little bit and go back to a first Friday in February a few years ago. Normally, DTSF didn't host promotions or events on first Fridays, but we decided to give it a shot, and we were going to show a film. We partnered with the State Theater. We showed a film there for the first time in, I think, over 25 years. We showed When Harry Met Sally, and then we followed that up with a late showing of Fargo. And they were both sold out. And it was really just so rewarding to hear the stories from people about how, you know, their grandmother was a popcorn girl there, or they got their first kiss in the balcony, or there was a couple that was celebrating their anniversary. They were high school sweethearts. They hadn't been in the State Theater since high school. And this provided them that opportunity to get back in there and relive the days of their youth. So that was really special. And what was even more rewarding was seeing downtown just abuzz that night. Downtown didn't really see this kind of activity in the middle of the winter. What this is going to do is it's going to give businesses a reason to stay open later. It's going to help the restaurant scene in downtown further develop. It's going to help generate more sales and more sales tax revenue. You know, so I just want you to keep in mind all the business owners that couldn't be here tonight who have this in mind, that are thinking about the possibilities that this presents for them. This opens up possibilities for us to embrace film again, to embrace our history, to embrace our culture. You know, Mr. Pritchett said it perfectly with the trajectory of downtown, and it is rooted in investing in arts and culture. I will disagree with him on one thing, though. He says it's a difficult vote. I think this is an easy vote. There's clearly a nexus with the entertainment fund, and I don't worry about the precedence that it sets by supporting the State Theater with the entertainment fund. I worry about the precedence that it might set if you don't support the State Theater. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Crank on those mics, Nancy. Pull those suckers down.
There we go. I'm Nancy Savage, and I have Child's Play Toys down in the corner of 11th and Phillips. We're celebrating our 10th year. I've seen our downtown grow bigger and bigger and stronger in the vibrancy, and I can only imagine what the State Theater would do for our businesses, for all small businesses downtown. Whenever there's an event at the pavilion, we see a direct correlation with that. Even, you know, I know restaurants do, but we do too. And having the theater open, I can only imagine what that would do, and in turn creating, you know, more sales tax revenue as well. And of course, it has a special place in my heart, and I think a lot of people downtown, I really hope you consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Anyone else this evening speak on this topic? Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Lynn Jones. I had not even planned to speak tonight. And I have a different take on this. I'm an almost 25-year resident of Sioux Falls, mostly a West Sider, but moved to downtown a little over a year ago. So I'm not a business owner. I'm not a restaurant person, or I'm not even in any of the downtown community other than I work downtown, I worship downtown, and I live downtown now. And I can only imagine how great this is going to be for someone who just wants to be downtown. This is where I live. I spend all of my time at the businesses that they're talking about. I work at the pavilion, and it's the greatest place for me to be. I'm so excited to hear that they're going to give field trips to kids for free, and that there's going to be thousands of tickets given to underserved kids, because those are the people who don't get to partake of downtown a lot because they don't have the money to do so. So as an educator and in the informal education world, I'm super excited for that possibility. But mostly it's a selfish thing, is that I want this to be a better downtown for me and my friends and the people that I spend time with. And I'm just super excited, and I hope you will support it.
Thanks, Lynn. Anyone else this evening to speak on this? Come on forward. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Stacy Newcomb-Weiland. I've been involved with the State Theater Project for about 12 years. I got involved when there was some indication that the building would have been torn out and converted into office space. And I thought, you know, that just shouldn't happen. I know this was 2007. I know that in 2007, the downtown was still in need of a lot of things, and people weren't sure that we needed another theater. But I thought, you know, this is an opportunity to preserve a building, but it's also an opportunity to bring an economic driver to downtown. We have the Pavilion, we have the Orpheum, and they're fantastic. I can tell you I own Parker's. I've been on the board for 12 years, but I own Parker's over here, and I wasn't a restaurant owner when I got involved in this, but I can tell you that the Orpheum and the Pavilion are fantastic for all of the businesses downtown, and I don't know where we'd be without them. But the one thing we don't have is a daily venue that is affordable, spontaneous, and that's what the State Theater brings to downtown Sioux Falls and to Sioux Falls in general. This is not just for downtown, this is for the entire community. It's a heritage site, but it's also a really fun, interesting place for people to be. I have noticed that the State Theater is one of, I would guess, one of the top 5 sites in Sioux Falls that's photographed and used on all kinds of brochures and promotion. It is such an important building to, as Allison said, to our history, our community. I remember going as a young child to Mary Poppins and Sound of Music, and it was a big deal for our family to come down from Madison and go out for for a movie in the big theater. And the State Theater was the state-of-the-art theater in Sioux Falls when it was built in 1926. No one had seen anything like it before. And it's going to be that again. Everything we're doing to it, we're doing with the highest quality and with the future in mind. It will again be a state-of-the-art theater that will show all types of film, will be open to all people. We'll have other kinds of entertainment as we move along and move forward and as we need it. Whatever the community needs this facility to be, it can be. And it can be utilized by many, many organizations, other nonprofits, and the city. And everyone will enjoy it, I believe. So thank you for your consideration. I think this is a wonderful project and a great opportunity for us to bring together a private-public partnership that is pretty incredible.
Thanks, Stacy. Anyone else care to speak on this topic tonight? Come forward, young man.
I'm Brian Bondi. I live on Pender Lane in Sioux Falls. I want to talk to you about this in 3 different ways. First, as a citizen, then as a arts leader in the community and the state and the region, and then also as a professional fundraiser. First of all, as a citizen, I think there were a lot of us that must have come for Sound of Music. I lived in Flandreau and grew up there. That was the first place my parents brought me to see Sound of Music, and I remember going to one of the last shows there, and probably was trying to figure it out somewhere in 89 or 87. And I would love to see this reopen. I'd love to see this come alive in Sioux Falls. I spent time in Fargo. This theater and the Fargo Theater were brother and sister theaters. In fact, the organ is only 1 serial number apart. And I've looked at how vibrant that Fargo Theater can be for downtown Fargo. That's Fargo. This is Sioux Falls, and how exciting this could be. I think of going back all the way back to 1985 when the Wolf Study came out, and we were talking about the potential of the Washington Pavilion and how visual arts and performing arts and science could have an impact on downtown. I'm old enough to think that far back. Some of the rest of us are too. And this is the last thing. And I think about the impact of arts and theater in downtown. The first time I took a tour of the State Theater was in 1994. And there were a group of us who were involved in theater at the time thinking, what could this be? And we are finally so close to having this whole in downtown Sioux Falls filled. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about as a professional fundraiser. I run a company called Advanced Certified Fundraising. I have the highest certification in fundraising that's available in the country. And one of the things about philanthropy is it brings ideas and innovation to the forefront. But it's government that can often provide scale and also provide the kind of oversight that's needed to make these things come to full fruition. And I think this is a perfect public-private partnership, and I hope you'll support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Any other comments from the public this evening on this topic? All right, Council, we'll ask if you have any question for either Sean or anyone from the State Theater Board that's here this evening on this. Councilor Staley.
Question for Sean. First of all, Sean, I want to say thank you for your prompt response to some questions that I had submitted. Really appreciate that. However, we've kind of got a short turnaround time here. Explain to the public a little bit about how property tax works with this entity. I mean, moving forward, they will be paying property tax as on what part of this?
Correct. They are currently an assessed property. Whether the county changes that assessment, that will be up to the county and whether they modify it, but it is part of their pro forma projections, and it is a requirement of the gift agreement that they remain current on those taxes.
Right, but it will, as we're putting in the $5+ million, it's going to increase the value of the property, right? I mean, we're going to be gleaning more property tax revenue?
Potentially, but these are tricky buildings to assess because you base them on their highest and best use. The State Theater, it's a historic building, so it's very unique. So it'd be hard. I'm not an expert in tax assessment, so I can't tell you what that valuation might be. There is a possibility of an increased valuation, but I do not know what that would be.
But you're going to get building permits, right? They'll have to get building permits to do this?
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, I thought that always kind of triggered
yes,
the assessment.
There's part of that, yep.
And then I'm wondering, a question, maybe this is for them, for you. Am I correct that there will be alcohol served? The plan is to serve alcohol at the venue?
Yes, we're hoping to serve beer and wine.
And just on a side note, just so you understand, I mean, we denied the West Mall 7 theaters the right to do that. So that's been kind of coming up in the conversations as to, you know, you're going to allow this entity to do it, and then what about these people over here? So just that this, when and if this passes, that's going to be, and if that happens, we're going to have to readdress that, I think. Okay, so that's another question. And I could wait.
Keep going until you got your list checked off.
All right, so then I wanted to know, back to Sean, thank you. So the other question that's coming up is who was involved with crafting this, the agreement, and specifically, I'm wondering about this public benefit part, because I didn't really know anything about this until just the last 2 weeks. But
like most of the agreement, it was a discussion back and forth between the Sioux Falls State Theater Company and with the city. We knew as a city that we wanted to have some incorporated public benefit as part of that, and that was just back and forth discussions between us and what would meet that definition and what we think would be important for the city to have.
And I get that, and I'm, again, having lots of dialogue about this with the public. And I think the more we can show the public that they're going to get something for their $1.5 million, the more palatable this is going to be when it passes. So I like the field trip thing. I like the free ticket thing. I would, and I don't know how much movement we have to have a little more input into that, because we actually haven't seen the contract yet, right? So it's still like fluid, in my opinion. So are you going to be taking input from us once we get to see this, to say, you know, if we had some ideas to say, well, you know, let's include this or let's have this. would you be open to that, or is it kind of like a sealed deal now?
Well, it becomes challenging because we have to work back and forth to make sure we have something that will be acceptable to the board. There has to be something acceptable to the city. But that doesn't mean that every public benefit that would be prescribed by them has to be incorporated into that gift agreement. That can be just something that is a discussion with the Sioux Falls Theater Company on an ongoing basis.
I get that.
Yep.
And one more thing, and then I'll have my closing thing. Who came up with the 1.5 million? I mean, did Denny Sanford say it has to be 1.5, or is that something the city said, we'll do 1.5? Versus saying, well, the city's going to do 2 or the city's going to do 1 million. Where did 1.5 come from?
There was some early discussions. We had to have some cost estimating done to see what was even viable to get completed. I do know that T. Denny actually increased his amount and from the original amount that he had to help fill the gap of what was left, because it was more so than what had been originally requested from the city.
Is there a possibility he's willing to give more money down the road?
The important thing, I think, for I can't speak for him, I'll say that. The important thing to know is that he likes to see leverage and buy-in with his funds, other than the funds that he's providing. So that was the important component. It was having the city both to be an investment partner from a monetary perspective, but also from a technical perspective, that we have buy-in as a city.
Well, and I appreciate, because last week, I appreciate your work on putting, I'm thinking you changed some wording to say that this would be specific to this project because of the historical nature.
Correct.
Right? We had said, because otherwise we're going to have all sorts of entities coming out and saying, hey, we want a little piece of this entertainment tax. So I appreciate that. Now, I do have to make a statement, and I'm going to ask that we defer this to Monday, August 5th. And the reason being, I had made a previous commitment next week. I won't be here. So just to be on record, you know, I wouldn't be here for the vote or the discussion. And secondly, since we haven't seen the contract yet, and it does seem to be kind of a quick turnaround, I don't know that this is an emergency situation, that would give us a little more time to look at things, and I would be more comfortable if I had a chance to even, if you said maybe give a little input, just some things that might make this a little more, as I said, palatable, acceptable, embraced by the community as a whole. So I'm going to make a motion that this is deferred till Monday, August 5th. And it's Monday because we have the neighborhood watch groups on the Tuesdays.
Councilor Staley, I'll have you hold that motion until we see if there's any other questions for Sean, and then we move into motions. We'll have you make that motion. So is there any other questions for the council for Sean or for anyone from the State Theater from the council? Councilor Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question is based on the 3 mayoral board appointees. My question probably is for you, if appropriate. I'm curious if that will be a city employee, someone that will be a citizen, or if that's not decided yet, what those 3 appointees look like.
I think the viewpoint would be that it's similar to all of the appointments that we make to boards, and that it would not be necessarily a Sioux Falls employee. It would be an independent person in the community that is appointed by the city to represent the city's interests.
Will there be a city employee on the board?
I don't know if that's prohibited, if you can appoint a part of that mayoral. I don't know if that's ever been done.
You know, I'll say it's going to be similar like the airport authority, for instance, where those are positions appointed by the mayor, but we have an ex officio member. I'm non-voting member that sits in on the meetings and could certainly be a part of the board. I'm sure they would not be opposed to having an ex officio member of the city of Sioux Falls, but the 3 specific at-large positions would not be city employees.
And I guess for me personally, I would like to see someone from the city on it, whether director, I'm not asking you to do it, but if it's you or someone from the mayor's staff, I think when we're giving a gift of $1.5 million, it's very important for us to continue to have that seat on the table for the next 10 years of the life of that agreement. I don't know, maybe if we talk offline and you explain the ex officio and the status of that and how it works, great. I know with the Airport Authority Board, we're not giving them an additional $1.5 million of entertainment tax. And so I have a little angst about that and would really like to see someone from within the city sitting on that. I don't know if it's a deal breaker, but just voicing my my opinion with that. I do have a couple questions for Allison or Stacy, whomever wants to take them. I know the beer license was brought up. I'm curious if you currently have a beer license?
No.
Or not? Okay.
No.
So my statement I would make in regards to that, well, yes, we did deny another theater. For me personally, I voted against it, but it was because of the security plan. And so I think it's really important as a facility what that looks like. It is a little bit different. It's also going to be an entertainment venue where there could be potential weddings or receptions or whatever you choose to do with that. So having that security plan for me personally is key, and what that looks as you move forward, because I didn't feel it was sufficient the last time. The other questions, if I can continue, is there's an opportunity for what's next. Balcony basement, second and third floor, and then the organ. My question to you is, what's the plan, the timeline, and how much are you looking for that?
Yeah, well, it all depends on funding as far as the balcony goes and the remainder of the building. So as soon as that funding's here, on which we are talking to some individuals, we'll be able to start hopefully while we're in construction mode, so we don't have to pause operations.
Okay, but you don't have a timeline as far as is this the list in which you want it done, the basement, or I'm sorry, the balcony, the basement, the second floor, is that the order of which you want it done, or is it kind of?
No, not necessarily. No, balcony would definitely take priority along with that second level mezzanine and that secondary concessions areas with the restrooms. That definitely takes priority.
Okay, that makes sense. I'd be curious, I don't know if it's been talked about, if there is a funding component of that, hey, we think it's going to cost an extra $3 million for that, or whatever it looks like. I'm sure there's been some discussion about how much some of those items would cost. And then as far as the timeline, because I think it's so important that while this investment is going to open the facility, it's important to get it done. Because we've seen it for several years and many pledges over the years, and then we kind of come to a standstill, which I'm not faulting anyone for. I love the State Theater. I love the location. I love the idea of taking field trips through it. I know my son has gone through it and just thought it was the greatest thing ever. And so exciting our youth about the arts is important too, and exposing them to things that maybe they wouldn't experience on any other day is a key area for me as well. So, I will say this wasn't easy for me to get to. I've struggled because of the use of entertainment tax. Apparently, auditors don't like it when you move money from one account to the other. At one point, I wanted to see that we funded this through a different way and have the zoo funded through entertainment tax dollars, because we've had that conversation as policymakers here. As we've continued to talk to that, and Sean has spent many hours on the phone with me and exchanging emails, I'm better, and I'm at a point to where I can support this, and I feel that it's important that this is the final step, but I want to hear more about the next steps of finishing the full building. I just don't want to approve this on a hope and a whim and saying, this will get us there, but what's the plan? I need more for the plan as far as the timeline. And I know it depends on funding, but everything does.
Yeah, what we're finding too is finally, investors, they're getting a return on that investment. We're going to be open and operational no matter what. So that's gotten a lot of excitement with future donors.
Right, and I agree. And I love the events that you've put on in the past. I've been to many of them. It's really fun. It's like no other event that I've gone to. You get all fancy, and it's an amazing event. And I hope that event comes back again too, because it was heavily attended, and I know they're a lot of work, but I really enjoyed, for me personally, just what it brought people to the arts. So thank you for entertaining my questions. And again, Sean, thank you for all your time and energy with it and helping me through that. I do have one question for Sean, if I can, because I know there's been some ideas being bounced around as far as not using entertainment tax, and say this council decides to use $1.5 million out of the general fund and having that done. Talk to me a little bit about what that would look like to the rest of the budget and implications or benefits
from doing it that way?
It's a good question. If it comes from the general fund, there's many things that are going to, I wouldn't say put stress, but are competing for dollars within the general fund. So the general fund, just for public awareness, it funds our public safety, it funds our pools, it funds our firefighters, it funds our road maintenance, snow removal, potholes. All of that comes from our general fund. So there's a lot of dynamics at play when it comes to the general fund. Do we have a reserve for our general fund? We do. And we have a good, solid reserve with our city. But typically, a lot of times the use of especially during a mid-year transaction of our reserve funds has been for one-off, unexpected types of expenses that are usually related to things that we couldn't predict. For example, the ice storm that cost the city $10 million. Now, we got $8 million of that back, but we had to dip into the reserves during that period when we awaited those funds to be returned. In August, we will have to come forward with a request from the Parks and Rec Department for a supplemental dealing with the repercussions that we occurred from the flood. That will be probably a $400,000 or more request. Much of it may be reimbursed next year, but we can't count on that necessarily coming from FEMA, so we have to be able to predict that we have to move forward with some of these important items. Snow removal, we've talked about this already. We have to come forward with a provisional snow removal because we've spent 94% of the budget because of all the snow we had earlier this year. We know that's going to be coming. Hopefully, like last year, we didn't have to spend the money, but we have to at least be prepared for dealing with that. Those will all be things that potentially hit our reserve. The other impacts it has is we look, just like we do look at the entertainment tax fund, we look at that general fund outlook forecast 5 years down the road. And when you've seen the budgets in the past, we do budget utilizing a portion of the reserve, and how that portion has come up with is we look at those projections. We look when that next fire station is going to be coming online. We look at the number of policemen that we have to add every year, which is typically at least 4 police officers we need to add to keep up with our growth and make sure that we are maintaining our key metrics on delivery when police officers are able to arrive on time for those. Those are key things that we know are going to come down the pipeline. We build that into those forecasts, and we want to make sure that our reserve is not dipping below the 25% that you have set as a policy for us. And that might be 5 years down the road, but that is one key portion of how we project how that reserve is going to be used. So if this funding is taken from that now, it will impact us in future, and particularly in the 2020 budget that's being put together in terms of the availability of those funds for those existing core functions for the city.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, and for full disclosure for the council and those in attendance. I did have the conversation with Sean to say, hey, can't we just use the money from the zoo that, rob Peter to pay Paul, and use the money, transfer the money from the entertainment tax for the zoo, use the general fund money from the zoo, and we're mid-year and we're not able to do that. And so that conversation did take place, but based on just, like I said, they don't like it when you transfer accounts. It just doesn't do well when you're audited. So I understand that, and I appreciate you looking into all of those questions, as well as our budget analyst, David Bixler, dove in and looked at a bunch of different strategies and ways that it could potentially be done. So thank you for that.
Other questions? Councilor Kiley, I'll start with you, and then Councilor Starr.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, when Councilor Erickson was gone last week, I too had brought up the question about a member on the State Theater Board, and I would encourage that at least one of those 3 mayoral board appointees be a member of the city government, finance department preferably, just to make sure that our investment is looked after, the taxpayers' investment is looked after. Last week, so I would encourage you to look into that further. Last week, well, first of all, every day for everybody. I mean, what a great slogan. I mean, I grew up benefiting from the State Theater as a child, too. And I think at that time it was local businesses that would chip in for Saturday morning matinee tickets. And so with my matinee ticket and a nickel, I could get in and watch movies all morning long. And it was great, and I'm sure my parents were glad to get rid of me for the morning as well. One other memory I have of the State Theater, my dentist's office happened to be on the 2nd floor of the building across the street. So as I'm sitting in the chair getting drilled, I'm looking across at the marquee of the State Theater and by the way, my mother didn't think we needed Novocaine either. I think it was her payback for pain we'd caused her. But boy, there were times when I was wishing that I was in the theater watching a movie instead of where I was. But I think there's a lot of sentiment similar to mine, too, and a lot of very broad and widespread support for this. And last week I talked about return on investment. And this is, to me, is a project that's going to give us good return on our investment. The State Theater is going to collect taxes, not only entertainment taxes, but our first and second penny taxes as well. The surrounding restaurants and bars that are going to benefit from the State Theater being open, they too will be collecting those same taxes. And the nearby shops too. I hadn't considered the fact that they may be remaining open longer, meaning they're going to collect even more taxes than what they're already collecting. And by the way, that money is going to be paid back into the community as well too, in terms of the revenues that the restaurants, the bars, and the shops are bringing in. That's going to, most of that is going to stay right here in the city of Sioux Falls. And I have no doubt that the State Theater will attract out-of-towners, because my wife and I frequently go to the old Dell Rapids Theater to enjoy movies there too. So we think nothing of driving 20 minutes or 20 miles out of town to attend a movie there, and I'm certain that more people are going to look favorably to coming to the State Theater, enjoying an evening of entertainment, dinner, movie, and maybe some drinks afterwards in our Sioux Falls downtown. And I'd also mentioned last week, we do have a unique situation here. For our $1.5 million, the city's $1.5 million investment, Denny Sanford is willing to more than double that investment, which just increases our return on investment even more. So I would agree with Mr. Batchelor. For me personally, this is not a hard decision to make. It's been made easy for all of these reasons. And as I mentioned, again, the support for the State Theater is broad and widespread, and I think it's going to continue to be that way as well. The entertainment tax fund forecast, it is a very sustainable outlook. I like the way that was phrased. In fact, if you look just 2 years after the State Theater opens its doors, the entertainment tax is already going to start to rebound. And within 5 years of the State Theater being open, it's going to surpass the amount of entertainment tax that was in there in 2018. And it continues to go up too until the city has other needs that need to be met with some of our other venues. So I do believe that there's a very good return on investment. I would encourage my fellow councilors to support this project, because I truly believe that there's something here every day for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too looked at it. I mean, we're in the middle. Well, let's preface it this way. My comments are more on how we come up with the money and how we fund it than the actual project itself, because I'm convinced that the $1.5 million and making this work is a big part of it. But where I'm concerned is, again, looking when we fund things mid-budget year, we have to be creative and we have to juggle things. The other thing, and I stated this at the informational meeting last week, is that the third penny entertainment tax, well, this is legal for us to take the money from there. We didn't, but a previous council sold this to our community to be the backstop in the funding of the event center, the Washington Pavilion, and the zoo that was added by ordinance just a few years later. We may choose to add other venues in the future to the ordinance, but at this point, when we're in the middle of a budget year, I think we need to really take a look at funding from the reserves. Our reserves continue to grow, and in fact, I pulled up the numbers from the reserve fund rather than talking about them generally. This gives us a little more of an impact, and take a look at where we're at. By ordinance, we're required to have a 25% reserve fund for that rainy day when things happen. So when you take a look at the 2019 budgeted amount of still being at 30.6% of the budget for reserves, our actual as of the end of May is 38%. So if we took the $1.5 million from the general fund reserve, we would still be at 37.1%, taking into account all of those things. So my plan next August 5th, if that's where Councilor Staley wants to move this to, is that I would bring an amendment that would take it from the general fund, because I think that's a better use of the funds. I think it's a stretch to say this is a good use of the entertainment fund tax unless we made an ordinance change at the same time, including this facility. And then maybe in the future, we could take a look at something that is more than just one-time funding, because I think that's going to be the case over the long run for this facility, because it's an old building, and as we've seen at the Washington Pavilion, it's a continual upkeep of maintaining older buildings. And I think anybody that's ever had an older home or an older business facility, it's going to take more. So I think the project is good, but I think it would be much more appropriate from a policy standpoint to take the money from the general fund reserves as they continue to grow. And if we have reserve funds in the middle of a budget year, that's what they're for, is for projects like this. Just like we did last year with the USD Discovery District, we found a way to move things around in the middle of a budget year to make things happen where it doesn't affect the overall income and the financial status of the city. So I don't think taking that $1.5 million out of a $169 million reserve is going to make that much of a difference. And I think it's much more appropriate.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm going to ask Councilor Staley to put your motion on the floor, and we'll vote on that first here.
So I'm going to move that we defer this ordinance till the second reading to Monday, August 5th.
All right.
Point of order, can I ask a question?
You can, you bet.
My question, Councilor, is do you want to approve this first reading and have the second reading August 5th? Or do you?
Yes,
so you want to move to approve, set the second reading for August 5th instead, not
Yes.
defer it?
Right.
Instead of July 16th?
That is correct.
So I'm
do I
going to
need
say
to
you
rephrase that?
have a motion on the floor to set a date of second reading for Monday, August 5th.
That is right.
Thank you.
July.
I had the date wrong.
Yep.
Second, Starr.
All right, seconded by Councilor Starr.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilor Steele.
Two separate, is it to approve the first reading and amend it to read August 5th? Is there two separate votes, or is it one vote?
Just one vote. So she's making a motion to set a date of second reading for August 5th. So the recommended recommendation would be to set it for next week. She's making a motion to set it for that. So that's the only motion on the floor, so that's what we'd be voting on right now. Now, if this fails, this item then fails, correct?
No, then you would vote on the one that's before you.
Okay, got it.
Correct.
So, okay.
Can I ask?
Councilor Sale.
Councilor Staley, I appreciate your intent that an important thing like this, that we need to be here for that. I too will be gone next week, but I'm very hesitant to stop the business of the city just so one or two councilors can be here, because as we see tonight, Councilor Neitzert's not here. And this is an important issue to him too, I realize that in my conversations I've had with him. So even though I would like to be here for the second reading if it's August 5th, and that'd be awesome, I'm not going to support your motion to move it because I don't want to stop the city's business just based on attendance.
And I understand, if I may respond, but I will say in the past we have a precedence of taking that into consideration. The case in point is when we were having the golf course contract. As some of you may have followed that, but we wanted to set a special meeting, and I had made plans to be with my mother, and the council was considerate about rescheduling that so that I could be here. So it's not unheard of to ask for that. But I just wanted these people to understand that why I won't be here next week, and I'm making an attempt to be able to be here for the vote. So as is within my right to do.
Councilor Erickson.
And we did change the ordinance in which we can now call in. So if anybody is able to, I know you might not be able to based on whatever your commitment is and whatever your commitment is. I know I was gone last week and not able to call in, but we do have a right as counselors to call in should we be able to, and should that work within our time. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's take a vote on that motion first here, to set a date of second reading for Monday, August 5th.
Council members Erickson?
No.
Kylie?
No.
Selberg?
No.
Sale?
No.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
No.
All right, that fails 5-2.
Make a motion to approve to move the second reading to next Tuesday, July 16th.
Okay. Second. So moved and seconded by Councilor Selberg. Any discussion on that, Councilor Sale?
Yes, I'd like to take just a short time to express why I'm going to, I think this is a great thing. Director Pritchard talked about Washington Pavilion being a pivotal time in downtown, and I agree with that. The second thing we might overlook is the fact that we closed down the loop right after that. So there was not the riffraff, I'll call it, downtown so that people could come invest. I was wrong on the Washington Pavilion. I didn't see the value. I wasn't enlightened enough at that time. And the only time I've actually been into the State Theater was when we burned down the Hanson building right next door. And I know the structural damage that happened to that building at that time. And as far as it comes with our commitment, where we come up with the 1.5, Councilor Starr makes some good points. He really does. But also, I also have to defer to our finance department because they've been pretty on spot since I've been here. And I've asked Director Pritchard several times about his forecasting and continue to harp on that and his financial forecasting. He's been right. The last thing I'd like to say about this, you know, the city council gave $750,000 to the Iceplex. Excuse me, $1.5 million to the Iceplex with only a $750,000 commitment by Shields to build that. So we doubled the private investment. And then Joe Zuger and his team went out and raised the additional $6 million that was needed to do it. That is a booming success story for Sioux Falls. It's out there. They're having hockey camps right now out there. They're keeping all 3 sheets of ice open all winter. So if you look at what's happened at the Levitt this year, and you think that Sioux Falls is ready for something else downtown, I believe that at this point. I really do. Maybe not 15 years ago, maybe not 20 years ago, but today I do believe that. So I'm going to vote to support this, and I encourage the rest of the council to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, any other discussion on this motion on the floor? Then we will take a vote on it, please.
Councilmember Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Item 17.
A resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving the placement of a sculpture on public property.
More art. I love it. Love it when Russ comes. There it is. Thanks, Tom. Good evening. Russ, how are you?
Good evening. Russ Sorensen with the City Planning Office this evening. Mayor, councilors, City of Sioux Falls. This particular resolution is for approving placement of a city-owned sculpture known as In Veritate Concordia, meaning united in diversity, on public property at the Orpheum Theater. This sculpture was designed, installed by Mr. Matt Cargill, who's an artist from Iowa at the time. And in 2008, the city conducted a call for art and adopted a resolution for the subject sculpture to be located on North Phillips Avenue, west of the railroad trestle, adjacent to the Falls Park. In 2015, the city adopted a resolution to remove that sculpture and place it in storage to allow the city property sale and an office development on that property. Since 2017, the City of Sioux Falls has worked with the artist to address a waiver of agreement to modify the artwork. It took a long time to track down the artist for this waiver. In May of 2019, the artist submitted, I'm happy to report, a waiver of agreement in regards to the Visual Arts Right Act to modify the artwork. In exchange for that waiver, the city administration supports the resolution allowing the removal of each crane figure from the 4 box structures and place the 4 colorful origami crane figures as is on the existing quartzite pedestals in the Orpheum Theater yard. The courtyard is well landscaped, illuminated, and secure. The 4 individual crane figures measure about 36 inches in height, 46 inches in width, and 57 inches in length. Per the waiver agreement provided by the artist and accepted by the city, the 4 box structures would not be used. The artist would be allowed to take possession of those aluminum box structures at his expense and liability. The cranes, however, will be continued to be used on the Orpheum site and be attributed to the artist. The city will be responsible for all project costs associated with the sculpture installation at the Orpheum Theater and be included in the city's annual art conservation maintenance program. Provided funding is available, the crane figures will be refurbished and maintained in phases through the city's annual art maintenance program. The City of Sioux Falls and the Sioux Falls Imagine Cultural Plan, along with the Visual Arts Commission, encourages and recommends public art integration within public spaces and places in our city. And that is evident in the previous item tonight. The Orpheum Theater Board and the Visual Arts Commission both have reviewed this proposal and respectively recommend unanimous approval for the sculpture and the placement for the effective artist waiver agreement at the Orpheum Theater. That concludes our proposal.
Thank you, Russ. Anyone from the public here to speak on this topic tonight? Council, you have any questions for Russ on this? Mr. Mayor. Councilor Starr?
I was just wondering if Director Franken was still here. Because when you notice it's our courtyard, correct? Did you notice in the front of the picture what?
Sure.
Oh, back up one.
Forward.
Forward.
One more.
One more.
One more. Back.
We'll get there. Are we allowed to smoke on public property, on the City of Sioux Falls' property? Because that's our courtyard, isn't it, with the Orpheum?
That I'd have to defer to
No, that's
the
why I was
department.
asking for Director Franken. So I'm fine. Thank you.
Any other questions for Russ on this one?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second, Star.
Move to approve by Councilor Erickson and seconded by Starr. Any discussion, Council? We'll take a vote on it, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley? Brecky?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 7-0. Move on to item 18.
A resolution vacating the 63rd Street North right-of-way from the east right-of-way line of the Northcliffe Avenue to approximately 466 feet east as shown on Exhibit A.
Good evening, Chad.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Chad Heavey with Public Works. This right-of-way is not an improved street and is on the east side of Cliff Avenue, just south of I-90. The South Dakota Department of Transportation is the adjacent property owner and submitted the petition to vacate pursuant to South Dakota codified law and with our right-of-way vacation policy. One person did attend the public meeting that we had. They had just a few questions and no concerns on the vacation. If the vacation is approved, an easement will be maintained for private and public utilities, and there is no access to Cliff Avenue from this property. And I'm more than happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Chad. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this one tonight? Councilors, do you have questions for Chad on this one? Councilor Sale?
Chad, when did they close off the access to Cliff Avenue?
Several years ago when we redid this interchange is when the DOT acquired that property.
My recollection is there was some consternation about the value of that the DOT acquired.
You know, I'm not an expert. I mean, I know there was a legal issue over the purchase of this property and the purchase of the access from the...
That must be all settled by now.
Yeah, it's all settled now. It's all been settled.
So how do you get the Len & Tony's repair then from... They had, because that used to, years ago, you would have to come, that would be the right of way, that would be the way that you would get, that would be the property just to the right of your picture on that same road the first one boxed in.
Well, now you would,
You have to come down 60th Street North, loop around.
and then take National to the north.
And they didn't protest for this? They didn't, because it's
We
been
haven't
shut
had,
down?
we haven't had anybody have any concerns. The only questions we've had is, what's going to happen with the property.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilors, other questions for Chad on this one? All right, look for a motion, set a date of hearing for Tuesday, August 13 on this item.
Move approval. Second, Kylie.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Selberg on that, seconded by Kylie. Any other discussion, council? All right, we'll call for a vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Recky?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 7-0. We'll move on to item 19.
A resolution vacating the east 44 feet of the west 54 feet of the south alley in Block 2 of Paulton's addition to the city of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County, South Dakota, as shown on Exhibit A.
All right, this right-of-way today is a paved entrance to a parking lot on the east side of Indiana Avenue, just north of 10th Street. The area in blue there was vacated in 1958, and right underneath that blue would be the front door to Handyman. The adjacent property owner submitted the petition to vacate pursuant to South Dakota codified law and with our vacation policy. We made the determination that a neighborhood meeting was not required for this because it is not a through street. If the vacation is approved, we will keep a easement for private and public utilities, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chad. Questions or public input tonight on this item from anyone? Councilors, you got any comments or questions for Chad on this one?
Move to set the date of hearing for Tuesday, August 13th.
Second.
All right, motion by Erickson on that, seconded by Kylie. Any discussion, council? Call for a vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Recky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Councilors, any new business tonight?
Move to adjourn.
Second, Star.
All right, motion adjourned by Erickson, seconded by Starr. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
All those opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Have a good night.
Yes.